So, you think you're untouchable?
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me.
Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. Happy post-draft Wednesday. We are no longer doing draft previews. We are doing draft analysis. So it feels like a shift in the equator, but here we are to do it. Thank you all for joining us and taking time out of your busy Wednesday schedule to tune into your Bayou Blitz podcast. And saying that, I am one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz. My name is Bob Rose, and joining me on the other side of the screen, his name is Brendan Boylan. He is your other co-host to your Bayou Blitz podcast. Welcome to another Wednesday, Brendan.
A normal Wednesday after a non-normal 15 hours on the air with Bob Rose. Jerry says that's the best intro in word life. Heck yeah.
Thank you.
What's up, John Butler? Thanks for tuning in per usual. Yeah, Bob. I said on our Saturday stream that the draft coverage went by faster to me than years past. And then I guess the adrenaline wore off. And then you were just like, damn, I've been on the air for 15 hours in 3 days. Like, that's a lot. And I've done it before, obviously, in the draft coverage. My guy, Eric Mangum, messaged me for the first time in a while the other day. So, Eric, for whatever reason, if you're just scrolling through Twitter right now and this comes up, I don't miss working 3-day baseball weekends for you at ESPN. I love you. Those are some of the best times of my life. But by the end of a 3-day weekend homestand in baseball that we worked, I don't know how much you'd have to pay me to come back and do that. To work for you, Eric, you don't got to pay me at all. But anybody else, there's no chance in hell. Bob, you have no idea, man. Worked like Friday, Saturday, and then doubleheader Sunday. You've worked like 4 games in 3 days with the same crew. The crew could finish each other's sentences. Like it was unreal.
I very much do know what that's like. I mean, I coached in track invitationals, state championships where was a 2-day event. Coached AAUs. Played volleyball, pro-am, AAU, for years. Those pro-am beach tournaments, especially, they were like a bunch of mini car wrecks, that you put your body through. If it was a 1-day tournament, pool play, playoffs, and championship all in the same day. Pat myself and my partner Jason Halpern on the back because more often than not, we were good enough to get into at least the quarterfinals, if not the semis and championship. That was often a 12-hour day of beach volleyball. So yeah, I very much know what you're going through, and what we put ourselves through with the Bayou Blitz Draftathon, it is enjoyable, folks. Don't get us wrong. But yeah, by the end, we're a little emotionally punchy, certainly mentally drained. When you get older, like myself, it starts to take a physical toll a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I guess I didn't even think about that with like pro-am stuff and AAU. Like, those days are fun. Those weekends. Mm-hmm. Those weekends are a lot by the end of it. This weekend was a lot for the Saints. You have some picks that we're going to potentially, I don't want to say tilt the scales, but certainly the potential to have the franchise move in some new direction by some of these players, right? So I think we'll dive straight into that. And I want to start with quarterback because that's what everybody wants to talk about. And we'll work our way back to the first round pick with Banks and what that can mean for the offensive line and the team in general. I got to tip my hat to Tyler Shuck because I wasn't a huge fan of the pick, right? A lot of the Who Dat Nation was not. But you know how you win a fan base over is what Shuck posted on his Instagram the other day. right? Saying, I will die on the field for you, Who Dat Nation. Tagging some New Orleans local music into that as well. That goes a long way, right? So from the Brendan Boylan PR school, it was an A plus. All he had to do though was really look at what the quarterback who shall not be named has done on social media, and just do the opposite. He was good. So, but honestly, to go out of your way, and it's one thing to just make the generic post, right? Like the coach speak post, if you will, after you get drafted. Like, you know, they get the phones and they're doing it for like the Saints, you know, social media team. They're like, "Hey, Who Dat Nation? It's Tyler Shuck. Like, can't wait to get to work." And then like that's it. It's like this little 5-second thing. But to go out of your way to, you know, express emotionally what it means to get drafted, what it means to go to a franchise like that, and that be the tone setter right from the jump is like, look, I'm going to be willing to die on that field. Dude, that goes a long way. And for a fan base that has a little bit of PTSD around the quarterback position the last, I don't know, 5 years with, you know, however many quarterbacks they've ran through over the last, really since Drew Brees retired. And we've played this. Or can you name every quarterback that has started for the Saints? And collectively, you and I together can. No problem. But it is like 7 or 8 quarterbacks at this point. I think it's 8 if you include the half game that Hainer played. But like you have a little bit of PTSD, got some trust issues, right? We're kind of in that stage of our relationship with New Orleans Saints quarterbacks. So for him to step out and go, hey, look, like this is who I am. This is the person that I want to be and the football player I want to be for you guys. That is one of the best, like, comforting things I think a lot of you guys in the Who Dat Nation could have gotten from a guy. So I got to give him props. And I'll be the first to say, I didn't like the pick. You guys who were with us knew I didn't like the pick. My college roommate who said he thought he was sitting in on a funeral after that pick when he tuned in, you know I didn't like the pick. But I'm going to give this guy a chance. I hope you guys give this guy a chance. And I'm really impressed with that. And I was also impressed to hear he did have dinner with his family in New Orleans last night or the night before, and the glowing reviews they got from the staff, the kitchen, the restaurant itself, and even some of the Who Dat Nation that saw him there. So far, so good. I got to give him props because, you know, you kind of walk into a situation where you were not the quarterback that a lot of people wanted. And so far, so good. PR school of Brendan Boylan gives an A+ to Tyler Shuck through his first week as a New Orleans Saint.
Yeah, certainly an A+ grade coming out of the gate from a public relations standpoint. And as you know, Brendan, and as you know, anybody who follows my work knew, and certainly anybody that tuned in, to our draft coverage, any of the 3 days knows, I wasn't nearly as sour on the Shuck pick as what most were. From a football standpoint, I think the kid is a player. I love his release. My opinion, he has the best upper body mechanics and arm release of any quarterback in this draft. I know injuries are a concern, but hopefully that's just a string of bad luck rather than an injury-prone player. I'm sure we'll find out. I know age is a concern. I addressed that on our show, on our draft coverage, and I said, it's 20. I don't care that he's 26. If he could play until he's 36 and play at a high level of ball, there's only one other quarterback in New Orleans in the 58 years of New Orleans Saints football history, that has played at a franchise, where the Saints got franchise level quarterback play from only one guy in that 58 years. And that was Drew Brees. So, I mean, the bar is set rather low for that. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like Tyler Shuck is coming out, getting ready to work. I think it's safe to assume that he was Kellen Moore's choice at quarterback. Because they had an opportunity for everybody else on the board except for Cam Ward, and Tyler Shuck was the guy. Even Jackson Dart, who I know went in the first round, the Giants traded back into the first round to get him. We know this much about Mickey Loomis, that if the Saints want a specific player, they will leave no stone unturned to go get that player. So if they wanted Jackson Dart, and in my mind, it was probably a 50-50 toss up between Dart and Shuck, for the Saints' choice at quarterback. But if Dart was heads and shoulders above Shuck in their view and their analysis, then Jackson Dart would have been a New Orleans Saint and not Tyler Shuck. So, I mean, Kellen Moore got his handpicked guy, first-year coach, first-time coach, rookie quarterback. They're going hand in hand and hip to hip into this thing, and I'm here for it. I love when one guy tabs the other as, you are going to help me save football in New Orleans, to borrow a term from draft day. Obviously it's not that bad. Football is going to remain in New Orleans, good, bad, or indifferent. But Kellen Moore obviously wants to turn this thing around, and he tapped Tyler Shuck as the guy to do it. Therefore, I'm not going to criticize the pick whatsoever. I didn't when it was made. I didn't when it looked like he could be the guy leading up to the draft either.
Yeah, I was really concerned with the age. I said it a lot during our draft coverage. I made the jokes that him and I were in college at the same time. I will say, if you want to look at it from a positive standpoint when it comes to the age, he is probably the most pro ready to start quarterback because of the years of experience that he has. And we'll see. He is projected to be the starter, but even Mickey Loomis said it's going to be a competition. I don't know how much of a competition it really is going to be. But look, Spencer Rattler started 6 games for the team last year. And Spencer Rattler comes out in training camp, many OTAs, mini camp, training camp, in the preseason. He's slinging it.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be a little bit of a closer competition than we think. But I think having a couple days to sit on it, for me, still not in love with the pick or where they picked him. And I see Mike even threw that in the chat. The player is fine. Where they picked the player is the problem. Yes, I'm in agreement. I did not have a second round grade on Shuck, to borrow from Bob, who said it for the last month and a half. We should probably just get a hat made at this point. Why play Russian roulette if that's your guy? Apparently he was the guy, so they weren't going to risk it. So I am going to give him a shot. I've been able to sit on it and go, if this is Kellen Moore's guy and this is the guy that they want to run the offense, by all means, the guy and the kid deserves a fair chance. So we'll ultimately see what happens. Mike said, what round did you have him in? I had him somewhere 3-4, 4th round, somewhere in there. That was going into the draft. Once some of the news broke and once we started kind of hearing whispers of how much the Saints liked him, that kind of moved into being more of like a really solid 3rd round pick with the potential of being like a 2nd rounder. And then after night 1, it was very clear that if he was there, at 40, that was probably going to be the pick. That became very clear after night 1. So DJ says Rattler and Shuck battle out for first. Watch Carr come back. They need to cut Carr. DJ, we appreciate that. We're also we're going to avoid Derek Carr as much as we can for a while. If something happens, sure, but it just became a thing where it's like, and Bob, you can echo this or you can go a different route. It has gotten to the point where there is no more new developing stories when it comes to Derek Carr. It is just the same thing over and over and over and over. And for me, I don't feel the need to keep talking about it. For you, I'm sure, Bob, you don't feel the need to keep talking about it until some other news breaks.
No, I'm sick of Derek Carr. It's time for the team to move on from him. I want for the next story or show that I do where Derek Carr is a subject, I want that subject to be the Saints have moved on from Derek Carr, mutual parting of the ways, cutting of the player, trading of the player for Pez and lighter fluid. I don't care. It's time for these sides to part ways. It's reached that stage, where Derek Carr is like this close to becoming a locker room cancer. And I say it that way because of this reason. The Saints were never going to touch Aaron Rodgers, not with a 10-foot pole. I'm 1000% convinced of that. And the main reason why was the drama, the soap opera, and the narcissism that Rodgers brings into that locker room. You have a first-year head coach in Kellen Moore. You have one young quarterback in Spencer Rattler, and then you brought in another with Tyler Shuck. Why would you want to bring that into your locker room? Well, with Derek Carr already in that locker room, it's become the same thing. It's become drama, soap opera, and narcissism. And none of the guys in that locker room, let alone in the quarterback room, need that right now. It's clear that Derek Carr wants to be there. I'm not questioning his shoulder injury, not at all. I am questioning whether he really wants to be in New Orleans. I think the question now should be asked: do the Saints really want to keep that around? If I'm Kellen Moore, that answer is an unequivocal no. You're already paying him, so he's got his money. At this point now, you'd just be paying him to stay away, and I'm okay with that. Because it's time to turn the page for this franchise. They're attempting to get younger, as we've seen with 9 draft choices. You have a chance to start a fresh new chapter with a new quarterback and 95% new coaching staff. You brought in a bunch of new players. Even your free agent signings and acquisitions were on the younger side of 30 years old. So you're trying to get younger even that way. It's time to move on from Derek Carr. And as a result, the Saints fans that don't want him, we know you don't want him. The Saints fans that wish things would have worked out better, and I'm included in that group. We know, but it didn't. Like I said, I don't want to talk about Derek Carr anymore unless our next story is he's designated as a post June 1st release or something like that. It's time to move on, and it's time to stop talking about him. The one thing in my interesting life that I have led, that I've learned, is that if you stop talking about or acknowledging annoying people, they might not go away completely, but they won't affect your life as much. If we stop talking about Derek Carr, he ain't going to affect our life as much because he's not going to be playing football for New Orleans. So it's time to stop centering subject matter around him.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John Butler says June 1st is 32 days away. John, can you do me a favor, buddy? Can you do like a daily countdown on Twitter? Just so I'm reminded. So it's, you can just tomorrow, 31 days till June 1st, and then just picture of Derek Carr or whatever. I'm you.
Good with that.
But I'm totally with you. It's just one of those things where I think your last sentence there was probably perfect. He is never going to play for the Saints again. You didn't say it exactly like that, but to your point, he's not going to play in New Orleans any longer. I am willing to bet money he's taking his last snap as a Saint. And I think that's a pretty safe bet at this point. So if he's a guy who's on the team, but he's not, you get what I'm saying? Like technically he's on the roster, but he's really not a part of the team. Like, why are we talking about it?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with Bob. unless one of you guys in the comments has a question involving the quarterback room, I don't really want to talk about Derek Carr anymore. Because again, well, one, it's exhausting. Like Bob and I joked going into the drafts, we had an episode where we started saying the one who shall not be named. And it was like after that, it was like Derek Carr news just exploded. And it was like, great. All right. No, we got to talk about it. Well, now there's no more new news, right? It's just the same recycled thing, regardless of whether it's being talked about on a podcast, whether it's being tweeted about, whether David Carr is talking about it on NFL Network or Derek Carr is talking about it wherever Derek Carr wants to talk about it. It's the same thing. So until there's new news, I don't want to talk about it anymore.
There you go. I'll tell you what I do want to talk about before we get into more draft analysis. Our sponsor, Get Checked or Check Out. The Bayou Blitz, Brendan and myself are both extremely proud to continue being a part of promoting Get Checked or Check Out. It's a foundation that was set up to help improve lives by building community awareness with mental health and physical well-being, advocating early diagnosis for cancer, diabetes, and heart-related ailments. Their mission is to focus on the total person, body, mind, and spirit, as well as linking families up with the resources they need in such trying times. Now, one of the annual fundraisers that they do is the original Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise. My family and I were thrilled and privileged to be a part of the 11th annual cruise about a month and a half, 6 weeks ago now, where it sailed out of the port of New Orleans, sailed to Cozumel, and just had a blast. With a few dozens of people, Saints fans, as well as former Saints greats, Delvin Breaux, Tyrone Hughes, Michael Lewis, Courtney Roby, and Pierre Thomas. Lance Moore was scheduled to go, but unfortunately had to cancel at the last second, really. Poor Lance, because of work. But I mean, all of these guys, it was Pierre's first cruise, but in talking to him at length, I'm pretty positive he's going to continue to come back. Delvin, Tyrone, Mike, Lance, Courtney, they've been working, with Get Checked and Check Out for a long time now. They've all been on multiple cruises, and the awesome thing about that experience is you weren't just around these guys during specific sessions like autograph sessions or Q&As. No, them and their families hung out with us the entire trip. On the deck of the boat, at dinner, at lunch, just walking around BSing, and it was just awesome to get to know them. To me, that was the highlight of my trip. That and to getting to know, so many of you fans that went in person, a lot of you that, read our works or tune into our shows. We've gotten to know you a little bit through social media, but it was so much greater to meet you in person. And I felt like it was an extended family reunion, which was just awesome. But the cruise itself, I also had like different events, Q&A sessions with the players, at dinner, trivia, and a very competitive, I will attest to how competitive it was, a very competitive putt putt contest. But Get Checked or Check Out does more than just the cruise, and they need your help to continue doing it. We at the Bayou Blitz, we're going to help them and help Shireen DeWalt, the co-founder of Get Checked or Check Out. We're going to help promote certain health issues, highlight certain health issues every month. We dropped the ball. I dropped the ball because April is, since we're on the last day of April, is Autism Awareness Month. I'm going to work to get a heads up on what Shireen wants to highlight during the month of May, which health event. But that's just what Get Checked or Check Out does. Like I said, they focus on certainly the health, early diagnosis, going to checkups, getting things checked out. But they're also in place for, if you or a family member receives what you think is the worst news you could possibly get, your first thoughts turn to, where do I go next? Who do I talk to? Who do I get in touch with? They help set families up with those exact resources. Shireen, the foundation, Get Checked or Check Out, and the Saints greats that I mentioned before. They'll continue to post different things on the Bayou Blitz page, their own page, as well as ours. So I mean, make sure you check those out. And like I said, they need help. And for any additional information regarding next year's cruise, other events coming up, or if you want to be a part of the donation process, you can go to the website at the bottom of our screen, the Get Checked or Check Out website, or just shoot myself, Brendan, or Shireen a message. We'll all be there's so many other helpful members of the organization. I don't have your permission to use first and last names for it yet. That's why I'm only mentioning Shireen. But there are several people that will help walk you through the process too, if needed.
Yeah, Bob, like Bob said, we will be doing everything we can to continue to promote and support what Shireen's doing over there. Some great stuff, and can't wait for next year's cruise. But there's so much to do and talk about and bring awareness to in between now and then, and we're excited to be able to do so. Bob, Mike asks a good question, and this is a good segue into going over some of the other picks here. Mike wants to know about the quality of the offensive line, including the first-round pick and Banks, and whether we believe there will be any reshuffling of the offensive line. So Kelvin Banks Jr., number 9 overall selection out of Texas. I mean, shoot, his personal trophy case at home speaks for itself. I mean, a guy who's won a lot of awards, was highly touted during his collegiate career. Remember how young he is, right? We talked about that when he got drafted. Just turned 21. Started over 40 games at Texas, and is a guy that really gives you a cornerstone piece of the offensive line for many years to come. And we talked about that as well, the bookends between him and Fuaga and what that may look like. So I guess we'll start there. Fuaga played left tackle his rookie season, but played right tackle in college. Do you assume that will happen, where Fuaga is going to get kicked out from left tackle to right tackle? Banks goes in to be the protector of the blind side, which leaves Trevor Penning for where? Or is it going to be one of those things where Banks kicks inside, where a lot of people projected him to potentially be a better NFL player and keep the tackles where they are?
And Brendan, I'm not a big fan of shuffling offensive linemen. It's not like playing Madden. You can't just move big fat guys around and continue and expect them to continue playing at a high level. But you also, and Kellen Moore has said this, you also want to put your best 5 blockers out there. And we didn't see that very often last year, or really the last couple of years with the New Orleans Saints. I do expect Banks to probably be the starter at left tackle, because that's where he played at Texas. Yeah, I know that there were some that projected him as guard. Maybe if he struggles at tackle initially, they'll move him inside. But they're going to do their best, to play their number 1 pick, at his natural position of left tackle. Doing so means that you do move Fuaga. And again, I just got done saying I'm not a fan at all about shuffling offensive linemen. But at least if you move Fuaga back to the right side, that is a position that he played very, very well, like an All-American level, throughout 3 years at Oregon State. Fuaga did. Now, if you do that, if you have Banks at left tackle, Fuaga at right tackle, what are you going to do with Trevor Penning? And this is another reason why I think they want Banks to work out at tackle. The Saints aren't picking up Trevor Penning's 5th-year option, which means unless they extend him during the regular season, which we have seen in the past. We've seen it with Eric McCoy and Cesar Ruiz. So if Penning plays well, maybe he does get a contract extension. But as it stands right now, Trevor Penning could be a free agent at the end of this coming season. So you don't want to leave Fuaga at left tackle, leave Penning at right tackle, put Banks in at guard, and then a year from now you're moving Banks at tackle and perhaps moving Fuaga back over to the right side. You want as little shuffling as possible. So that's why I think it happens now with Banks at left, Fuaga at right. And I suspect that they will try Penning at guard to see how he works out. The biggest weakness Trevor Penning has had in his NFL career is dealing with athletic defensive linemen, athletic edge rushers. He doesn't have real agile feet. Well, if you move a guy inside, that it doesn't eliminate that issue, but it reduces it. And I think Penning is 6'7", 6'6". To have a big, tall guard like that when you have a quarterback, say, of Drew Brees' stature or of Shadur Sanders' stature, if you're talking quarterbacks on the shorter side, that could be a bit of an issue. But Tyler Shuck, he's 6'5". So, having a tall guard is not going to affect you that much. And if it doesn't, if you do try Penning at guard and it doesn't work out, then at least you have yourself a solid third tackle who has starting experience on both sides. Should something happen, injury-wise to Banks or Fuaga, or should the rookie Banks struggle right out of the gate. So that's what I suspect is going to happen. But we're probably going to see Banks take some reps at guard certainly during OTAs and minicamp, maybe even early in training camp. But ultimately, I think the Saints' hope is Banks at left tackle, Fuaga at right tackle. You obviously have your fixtures with McCoy at center and the human turnstile Ruiz at right guard. Then maybe you let Penning and Dylan Radins fight it out for the left guard spot, provide a little bit of competition there.
Absolutely. I think worst case scenario for Penning is being that sixth offensive lineman that can kind of fill in where you right? And let's be honest, since James Hurst's retirement, you really haven't had a solid guy that's been able to do that can play multiple positions, come in and be an extra blocker. So I think that's worst case scenario for Penning. But to your point, Bob, the Saints didn't pick up the fifth-year option for Trevor Penning. So this could be his last year in New Orleans, or if he does work out at left guard and you sign him to an extension, then you're looking at, your centerpiece in Eric McCoy, who, when healthy, is one of the better centers in the league. Two very young tackles, a guy in Penning who's still on the young side, former first-round pick. It looks like if that works out, you have the ability to very quickly put yourself back in the conversations for one of the best young offensive lines in football. So I think that's what the Saints are hoping for. Now, if that doesn't work out, like I said, Penning kind of becomes your plug-and-play sixth guy who could play tackle, and then, all the shuffling that if need be. But I think they're in a good spot there. And, yes, offensive line is not a sexy pick, right? And we made the joke, it's 10 years now that the Saints have drafted an offensive or defensive lineman in the first round, in which they've had a pick in the first round. It's not sexy. They haven't hit very well on them, obviously, or they wouldn't continue to draft them. But this is one that just makes a lot of sense. And Banks being a guy who some people projected as high as like 5 and 6. That doesn't sound like a huge dip for some people. 5 to 9. It's only 4 spots. I mean, when you're talking about tackles, I'd say 9 out of 10 drafts, your top 2 tackles to that next tier of tackles, there is a pretty significant drop in talent. And the Saints made sure to get one of the top tier tackles in the draft, so I can't blame them. Let's see. John Butler says, remember when we were comparing Trevor Penning to Kyle Turley? Yikes.
Yeah, and I was one of those guys, sadly. And Kyle, if you're watching, first of all, it's been too long since we've had you on the show. That's my fault. I will reach out shortly. But we're sorry for the insult. Now, Penning had a good season, but Trevor Penning is no Kyle Turley.
Absolutely, you can't really see it, but above the Delvin Bro jersey is a Kyle Turley autographed jersey. But yeah, I mean, in the defense of the people like Bob and I and other members of the Saints media, the ruthless aggression that Penning showed on tape was one of the first things that stood out in making that comparison. We'll see. Maybe if he bumps inside, we see a little bit more of that ruthless aggression.
Andrus Pete really struggled his first 3 years at tackle, left side and right side. When the Saints finally moved Andrus Pete inside, he found a home, at guard, and he made 3 Pro Bowls. I'm not saying the same thing could happen with Trevor Penning, but my point is we've seen it happen before. So if that is indeed what happens, then like you said, Brendan, I mean, the Saints have the makings of a pretty damn good offensive lineman or offensive line, with 2 bookend tackles, on their rookie contracts, by the way. A young Trevor Penning and a solid Eric McCoy. I won't talk about the other guy at right guard.
I think that if it works out, it'll kind of jumpstart what the Saints are able to do offensively.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't, you still got your bookend tackles for hopefully, knock on wood, 10 years or so. So I think it works out for everybody. Let's talk about some of those other picks. I guess we'll go in order. I think that's the best way. We already kind of bounced around there at the beginning talking about Shuck first, but now we'll go the rest of the order. Defensive tackle is definitely a need for the Saints, especially making this adjustment to the 3-4. But another pick that not a lot of the Houdat Nation liked, I think a lot of it was the value aspect of it, feeling like you might be able to get them a little bit later. Bob, now that we've had some time to sit, marinate on it, have your thoughts changed about really, let's talk about both third-round picks because you and I were not thrilled with either. Has your opinion changed, or has something else shown on tape, might be the better way to put it, that brings you around to either of the third-round selections?
With one of the third-round picks, yes. With the other one, I give a resounding no. My opinion has not changed.
All right, well, let's go with a positive one.
Vernon Broughton. That's the one that raised a lot of eyebrows initially. But Alan Ulrich pointed out, shortly after he was drafted, Vernon played at Texas. His line coach for part of that time was Bo Davis, the new defensive line coach for the New Orleans Saints. Well, boom, there's your light switch right there. You have a coach that's familiar with familiar with what they want to do on defense. And, you see a guy on the draft board that is able to do what you want to do on defense. So, the pick from that aspect made a lot of sense. Maybe Vernon isn't an immediate starter. But I look at it this way, and this is one of the things that has resonated with me, in the last few days. The Saints had the 31st ranked rush defense in the NFL. We're tied for last in yards per carry. Vernon Broughton was drafted specifically to remedy that. He wasn't drafted to be the next Aaron Donald. He wasn't drafted to be a 10 sack a year guy. He was drafted to stop the run, clog up inside running lanes, tie up additional blockers so the edge rushers hopefully will have some more one-on-one opportunities in passing situations. So this isn't a guy that's going to fill up the stat sheet, although he was a pretty darn good pass rusher for the Longhorns, as far as interior linemen go. I do see a player, since I've watched him on tape more after the pick, I do see a player that I want to see him play with more leverage, but he has the power to get that push inside. He has decent lateral movement, to cut off rushing lanes down the line of scrimmage. Something where the Saints just got absolutely gashed last year. And, a lot of people were talking about, Demario Davis, he's on the downside of his career. He wasn't making nearly as many plays at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield. Because either A, by the time runners got to him, they were already 3 yards, 5 yards, into the defense, or B, Davis didn't get a clear look at the rushing lane because he had blockers on top of him. A guy like Vernon Broughton is drafted specifically to stop that from happening. So like I said, not a guy that's going to fill up a stat sheet, not a guy that's going to play 40 and 50 snaps a game, but a guy that's specifically put in place to help you stop the run.
What does that mean, and what does this pick mean for Bryan Bresee, if anything? And changing from the 4-3 to the 3-4.
And that's it. I don't think it means a lot for Bryan Bresee at all, because I expect Broughton to fill the role more often than not of a nose tackle, or certainly a guy that lines up over the center. Bresee, when they play traditional 3-4 fronts, Bresee is going to be one of the ends. And, I know he is bigger, heavier, on the heavier side for a 3-4 end. But you look at Brandon Staley's history, he's always run the 3-4. Yes, a lot of people know that. What you may not know is Brandon Staley prefers heavier ends in his 3-man fronts. So, that fits perfectly into what Bresee does, can do, excuse me. Frankly, that fits perfectly into what Cam Jordan does too, because, Cam Jordan was always on the bigger side, for today's day and age of smaller, faster edge rushers. Cam goes 285, 287. Bresee, goes about 295. That's kind of the prototype that Brandon Staley wants for the ends. I expect, Broughton and Devon Godshaw, to, kind of battle it out for reps, especially on early downs, goal line situations, where it does bring a question to me are the other two tackles. The guys that they signed as free agents a couple of years ago. And why can't I remember their names right now? What's that?
Kalen Saunders.
Yeah, Saunders is one. Yeah, Saunders and Nate Shepard. They're big guys, but they aren't prototype nose tackles. And I'm not sure they're athletic enough for 3-4 ends, maybe on early downs or goal line situations. So the addition of Broughton makes me question what they're going to do with Shepard and Saunders more than how I question what they're going to do with Bresee.
And then the other pick was one that you were not fond of, and apparently after watching film, you still aren't fond of, and that's the multi-time second-team All-ACC safety out of Virginia.
Yeah, I don't like to throw the word hate around when it comes to a draft pick very often, but I hated this pick, and I still hate this pick. Sanker was a kid that I started watching film on. And then, when they signed Justin Reed, I cooled my jets on the safety prospects that I was profiling, and I still published a handful of pieces that I did the notes on. Sanker I did not do, because Sanker I stopped watching the film on earlier than what I did several other safety prospects, because I hate his coverage range. He has none. I hate his ability to cover the slot. He can't. I hate his ability to play a one high safety, single high safety. He can't. He doesn't have the range. If the Saints put him in any of those roles, covering the slot, man-on-man coverage, or single high safety, then you're going to be seeing the name Sanker a lot in highlight reels, because we're going to be seeing the back of his jersey on a lot of big plays or long plays. Now I'll say this about and we said it several times on our draft coverage. We've said it for several years in a row. It's not that I'm not rooting for the young man. I am. I hope he proves me wrong. And ends up being the next Hall of Fame safety for the New Orleans Saints. That would be just spectacular. Because what I do see is, again, we're talking about the 31st ranked run defense, folks. I see a player that is very good against the run, very aggressive against the run. He has nice instincts and recognition against running plays, and he's on the bigger side. He's very physical. You can play him down in the box, and he's going to make a lot of plays at the line of scrimmage. Has good recognition of screen passes, read and react skills there. So I'll give him credit for that. I compared him, to a Malcolm Jenkins or a Roman Harper. And I know both those guys had great careers. Harper's in the Saints Hall of Fame. Jenkins will be there one day. So comparing Sanker to them isn't necessarily a criticism. But the thing about Roman Harper and the thing about Malcolm Jenkins is the same thing. You didn't want them in single high coverage because they didn't have that coverage range. You didn't want to see them covering the slot against an athletic tight end or any kind of wide receiver because they weren't able to stay with them. It's going to be the same thing with Sanker. Now that's not to say that they can't drop that they can't drop Jonas back, in some too high safety coverages. And I don't know exactly what kind of role Brandon Staley has in mind for his secondary. If it's more of that, then the Sanker pick actually makes more sense than what I'm laying it out to be. Because maybe you can drop. Tyron, if you play three safeties, you drop Matthew back, you drop Sanker back. Those two will split the field well, and you can drop Justin Reed down in the box. Or you can play Reed and Matthew back, and you can drop Sanker down in the box. So from that aspect, he does give you a little bit of versatility. He just doesn't have nearly the versatility, and certainly not the coverage range I would have preferred in when the New Orleans Saints drafted to bolster their secondary.
He was a guy who played over 900 snaps in the box during his Virginia career. I think there's a mold. I think there's a prototype. You kind of highlighted Roman Harper in that, who made a very long NFL career with the Saints and the Panthers and being just a traditional true box safety. So we'll see what happens there. I think day 3 was an interesting one for the Saints in terms of the draft, because I think a lot of people think the Saints really nailed that for value and fit, which, again, they're day 3 picks. Some of them may not even make the roster, but it's fun to sit there and go, they got some guys here that could be serious fits. I may be going out of order, but how about we start with Devin Neal, the running back out of Kansas?
Yeah, because he's a pick that we both like. Alan Ulrich likes him too. Devin Neal is a fun kid to watch. He's a fun kid to watch play football. He's not a prototype bruiser, but he is a good runner between the tackles. He has very good vision. He's a one cut and go runner with the athleticism, to be very effective on outside zone run blocking schemes. Something that we believe that Kellen Moore is going to employ with the New Orleans Saints. He certainly did so with great success in the Philadelphia Eagles with Saquon Barkley last year. I believe that kind of scheme is going to be very beneficial for Alvin Kamara, and I believe that Devin Neal fits it too. Neal doesn't show much as a pass receiver. Part of it was because he just wasn't thrown to a lot. But when he didn't show great route instincts. Didn't show me much of an ability to run an expanded route tree. But as a runner, and that's, I say as a runner, I also mean that on screen passes he was this way too. He had very good vision for opposing defenses. Decent elusiveness. Not sprinter speed, but good enough burst to make big plays. And like I said, just a very decisive one cut and go runner. And he very rarely went down on first contact. He's a muscular kid that runs with good leverage, 5'11", 215. So as long as he doesn't hit that hole too upright or get too cute in the backfield, and he's the type of runner he was at Kansas. He saw the hole quickly, had the skills to hit it quickly, just a one cut and go runner, very much north and south. You could be looking at a draft gem since he was a 6th round pick, but you could be looking at the Saints finally finding that inside rushing complement to Alvin Kamara, so that way they don't have to run Kamara into the teeth of the defense as much, and you're not telegraphing to a defense what you're going to do, when you line Kamara out wide and bring Taysom Hill into the football game. Because if you have Devin Neal back there too, maybe, just maybe, that you're going to still be able to keep defenses on their heels and keep them guessing.
I know you're going to enjoy my follow-up question. Is this true competition for Kendre Miller?
Yeah, 100%. And I preface that with saying this is a 3rd round pick. There's nothing guaranteed with day 3 pick. Excuse me. There's nothing guaranteed with day 3 picks. There's no guarantee they're even going to make the team. Again, the Devin Neal that I watched film on, kind of the same kind of runner that I thought Kendre Miller was coming out of college. Kendre, better receiver, than Devin Neal has shown. But I think, and I certainly hope, that the addition and the presence of Devin Neal will at least show whether Kendre Miller wants to play football. And I'm not questioning his injuries. I know he was injured, has been injured a lot, but it's reached the point where I think that you can question A, his ability to play with injuries, or B, his ability to keep in shape to minimize or perhaps even nullify some of the injuries he's received. The Saints obviously needed a running back complement to Kamara because Kendre Miller hasn't been it. He hasn't been it because he hasn't been able to stay on the field. But regardless of the reason, he just hasn't been it. So yeah, Brandon, I 100% any running back that they bring in, whether it's through the draft, the undrafted kid from Delaware, Marcus Yarns, whether they just see a guy running across the parking lot at the 7-Eleven and signing him up. Any running back they bring into camp, I think Kendre Miller should view as legitimate competition for not just reps, but perhaps even a spot on the roster altogether.
Just because you brought up injury with Kendre Miller, that's obviously a topic, 2 words that kind of go hand in hand, injury and Kendre Miller. But let's not forget the weird situation last year where he hit IR. And the reports were he didn't need to hit IR.
Yeah.
He was healthy enough after like a week off or 2 weeks off. And he just kind of sat on IR because maybe he was in the doghouse. And there was all these rumors and stuff swirling. That was weird. I think that really got glossed over in what was a weird year for the Saints as a whole. But I do think it got glossed over because, like, what the hell? Like, what if Kendre Miller did play and was available for?
Well, and it was pretty clear he was in Dennis Allen's doghouse, and perfectly understandable why. But
there were the comments in training camp as well.
Right. But remember, when Dennis Allen was fired and Darren Rizzi, replaced him, Darren Rizzi was perfectly capable of, activating Kendre Miller off of IR, and he didn't do it. Now maybe he was in Rizzi's doghouse too. I don't know. Again, you're talking about a completely different staff. So really a fresh start for Kendre Miller. So we shall see. I think the writing is on the wall. They brought back Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Now you bring in Devin Neal, and you never know what you're going to get. The Saints certainly have a nice history of finding late round gems, with wide receivers and running backs in the late rounds and undrafted. So you bring in Devin Neal and you bring in Marcus Yarns in addition to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Maybe that does light a fire under Kendre Miller. Certainly, at the very least, it gives you some skilled collegiate backs. All of these guys succeeded in college. It gives you a handful of younger, successful collegiate backs that are going to be in competition for each other just for touches.
Let's go back to those 4th round picks that I just completely skipped over, and Danny Stutzman and Quincy Riley. Stutzman is a big linebacker, kind of a throwback type of linebacker in terms of height and weight, and his playing style and hitting holes north-south, and just being a guy who's going to bruise a running back at the line. Some concerns about his athleticism and coverage and what have you, but I don't think he was necessarily brought in for that. I think he is brought in to be more of – I compared him to a hockey enforcer on draft day, and I was like, that's kind of the role I see him playing, with the hopes that in time, because he's not going to be a starting linebacker his first season, but in time, he's able to develop some of that coverage skill. What do you like about the linebacker at Oklahoma?
And you hit the nail on the head of what I like about him. Again, definitely a theme with Saints defensive draft picks. Big guy, downhill defender, first and foremost stops the run. And that's what Danny Stutzman was brought in to do. Very, very instinctive football player, extremely intelligent. Called the signals for the Oklahoma defense for at least the last 2 years, if not 3. And remember, Brett Venables is the coach out there, in Oklahoma. He's not doing very well as a head coach, and I know he's on the hot seat, but one of the finest defensive minds maybe in college football history. And Danny Stutzman has been calling the defensive signals for him. That shouldn't go unnoticed. If you're looking for a potential replacement for Demario Davis, maybe as soon as 2026, Danny Stutzman could legitimately be it. He is a downhill run enforcer. On my show with Eric Asher earlier, or on Eric Asher's show, as one of his guests. I kind of compared him to filling. I didn't compare him as a player, but sort of playing style to Vaughn Johnson, Sam Mills. More recent comparison, since we're talking about Brandon Staley's defense, kid you and I love, Denzel Perryman. That is the playing style of Danny Stutzman. Where's the ball? Go get the ball. Bring down ball carrier. Check, check, check. Danny Stutzman does that, and does that with ferocity. His athleticism, is extremely limited. His sideline to sideline pursuit. Basically, he needs to read the play accurately from the get-go to be in position. Otherwise, he's going to get beat to the corner by athletic backs. But the thing about him is he does read very quickly and react very quickly. So that sort of nullifies that lack of athleticism. The agility and lack thereof in man coverage responsibilities, that's going to hurt him a little bit, but that can be disguised. Especially if you have a linebacker, as long as Demario Davis still plays at a high level, because when Stutzman is asked to, in Stutzman's zone responsibilities, again, he reads the field well, he reacts quickly, he anticipates well. You just don't want him in man coverage. But I think that Brendan Staley is going to try to find a role for Danny Stutzman very quickly. He's not going to be taking snaps away from Demario Davis. Not even sure he's going to be taking snaps away from Pete Werner. But it wouldn't surprise me if Staley tried to find alignments where he could get all three of those guys on the field at the same time. And as far as learning the game, learning the defense, he gets to learn from the best in Demario Davis. He gets to learn from a very high football IQ guy in Pete Werner. I like this pick a lot. As you know, Brendan, I usually prefer more athletic linebackers. Stutzman doesn't check that box, but he checks off all others, especially for a bigger, physical, aggressive run defense.
I also like what you brought up in the coach he played for at Oklahoma, right? I mean, you want to go back through history, look at Venables and the amount of Clemson defensive players that have been drafted since he took over Clemson's defense in 2012. Tells you everything you need to know. And the resurgence of that football program had a lot to do with the defense that just so happened to coincide with the time that he oversaw the defense. So a great defensive football mind. And then you brought up the fact he gets to learn from a guy like Demario Davis. Unlike a certain Clemson linebacker that the Saints drafted, I think he has it in between the ears. He might not be as athletic as the other guy, but he definitely has it in between the ears. Let's kind of speed round these last few picks, and we'll have to talk about potential free agents on our next show.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about Quincy Riley. Let's talk about Latavio, and then Diggs. They finally get their edge rusher in the 7th round. Quincy Riley was an interesting one. We kind of saw a run there in the 3rd and the 4th round on defensive backs. The Saints end up with a guy out of Louisville that, one, spoke very highly of his former and current teammate in Tyler Shuck as just a player and a leader. But this is a guy who transferred to Louisville and produced very well in the ACC. Got to see him a little bit because of the ACC schools here in my area. And he's a guy who, at about 6 foot, 200 pounds, has a lot of the intangibles to be a really good player. Another guy who's a little bit older at 23 years old. What are some things you like about him?
I'll tell you what, Quincy Riley is fast, man. That's the first thing that popped out on tape to me. He is fast, and not just in shorts and track spikes either. That speed carries over onto the football field. What I didn't like initially about him before the draft when I was watching film, because we both talked about a lot about how deep the cornerback class was, and Quincy Riley in other drafts. I think that Quincy Riley is a guy that could have went in day 2. He slipped into the later part of the 4th round, really. But my first thought was, when I was watching film on him before the draft, was okay. And I think I said this immediately after the pick too. Like, great ball skills, terrific off the ball player. Just reads the quarterback well, anticipates, baits them. Good route recognition against receivers, but struggles in man coverage. He's a taller guy, but he's real lean. Can get pushed around by physical receivers, and doesn't have, as fast as he is, he doesn't have a great change of direction. Well, I think it might have been you, but it could have been Tyrone Hughes too. That pointed out the Saints defensive coach is not Dennis Allen anymore. We were used to a certain kind of cornerback from Dennis Allen. Athletic, yes, but physical, man coverage, great instincts in man coverage. Well, Brandon Staley plays a lot more off ball. That's one of the reasons why we believe that Asante Samuel is probably going to get a phone call from the team at some point. More on that on another show. Off-ball coverage is where Quincy Riley excelled best. So I do think that there's a home for him in this secondary once you guys pointed that out to me and I thought about it a little bit, I'm like, yeah, you're right. And then I went back and watched more tape of him because like I said, I already had my pre-draft notes. One of the few players that I did, with the Saints draft picks. But after the film study, I came away. I'm like, okay, I do see potential in me as a press corner. But if he's going to be asked to play the slot, play off ball, even on the outside, he's certainly got the route recognition and the read and react instincts and 100% the ball skills to do it and to make an impact in that secondary.
And let's knock out these 7th round picks. Matavio, the tight end out of UCLA, a true receiving tight end, and we kind of joked on the show, like, well, how many years has it been that the Saints have really neglected the tight end position? And then Diggs, the defensive end out of Syracuse. I think the tight end's the bigger talking point. But I also feel like I feel like literally any tight end that has shown any ability to catch the ball that the Saints have even brought into like rookie minicamp, there's just Saints fans salivating at the idea of having somebody anything like Jimmy Graham that everybody gets a little too excited about. So
Yeah.
what do you like about the kid, and why should some people calm down a little bit about whether or not he's going to really find any snaps?
I'll tell you, he's a really fluid athlete with great hands. But doesn't have much of a route tree. And despite the fact that he's 6'6" and over 260 pounds, he ain't much of a blocker either. He better learn how to block real quick. To find a role on an active roster. I think he's a good enough pass catcher. And like you said, because he's a good pass catcher, it wouldn't surprise me if he was a training camp darling of fans that are just craving for a playmaker at tight end. But of the two, based off of the film, I think Diggs has Fadil Diggs, the edge rusher from Syracuse, the second 7th round pick. I think he has a chance to make a more immediate impact than the tight end. Like I said, the tight end, very fluid athlete, good hands. He's gonna wow people, in shorts and shells. I'm interested to see if he's gonna, show a little bit better blocking and more power to his game as an inline tight end. But Diggs, I hated the fact that the Saints waited until late in day 3 to address edge rusher. But Diggs has some nice natural pass rushing ability. 6'4", 257. You'd like to see him add more bulk to that frame without sacrificing athleticism. But his athleticism for the position is off the chart. Great first step off the snap. Has the speed to get around get around tackles in the blink of an eye, but has a nice power move as a counter too. He'll have to develop more consistent counter moves, and eliminate coming at a tackle so upright, because that gives a tackle a bigger blocking target for him. One of the couple of reasons why he lasted so late. But if you're talking about a guy that can be not much of a run defender, the only Saints defensive draft choice I could say that about. He's not much of a run defender. But as far as a situational pass rusher, again, you're talking about an edge position that had a combined 17 sacks last year and 16 the year before that. That's why I think he has a chance to make more of an impact than what the tight end can.
And John Butler is really bringing up former Saints draft picks that did not work out. He made the joke already about penning to Kyle Turley. Here he goes saying, yeah, Troutman wasn't that guy. Jerry comes back. Jerry said, not a big fish. I had higher hopes for the big fish, honestly. We got the one highlight in Tampa, that 38-0 game. That was about it, or 38, whatever. Then scored in the beginning of that game. That's it. That didn't work out. And we talked about it the other day, is like, yes, they've neglected it. Like, have they tried? Like, can you say they've put in, like, good effort? to address the position, like maybe half-assed effort, kinda like Kobe Fleener, kinda like Jared Cook, kinda trading the rest of your draft for Adam Troutman, kinda maybe. I miss Jimmy Graham, but as I always do, shout out Ben Watson. Those 2 years of Benjamin Watson were, even though the team was bad, those were joyous years where we're like, oh my God, we have a tight end again. And then for the last 10 years, we just haven't had a tight end again. But it is what it is. Bob, let's roll the show out. You have written a lot this month. You have spoke about the draft a lot this month. And for whatever reason, people are not tired of you yet, despite 75, 70-something articles, 75 articles?
75 articles this month, 83 last month. So, yeah.
Yeah. And people still like to hear your thoughts and hear you talk. So I guess you're doing something right. So where can people catch more of that and more of us throughout the remainder of this offseason?
Yeah, and over the next couple of days, I'm still getting caught up on my film study of the undrafted guys. I really didn't know much about any of them, after they were signed. So shame on me. So I'll be doing that over the next couple of days, and also publishing pieces on the draft notes that I have, so draft profile pieces on Diggs, Broughton, Shuck, Banks, Sanker, maybe. Already did publish pieces on Stutzman, Riley, Matavio, and Neal. So hopefully you check those out. If you didn't, or if you're interested in checking out the pieces that I have upcoming, check us out at Athlon Sports first. We're Brendan Boylan, John Hendricks, and obviously myself. We do all the New Orleans Saints pieces on Athlon Sports for Inside the Saints. I also publish the articles on my personal profile, Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R2613 over on Twitter. Make sure, if you aren't already, make sure you are a member of the Bayou Blitz Twitter page and Bayou Blitz Facebook group. It is where we streamline all of our shows. Also, it's a growing part of the family, and we love you for it. If you're already a member, thank you. If you're not, make sure you join up and bring other Saints fans with you. We also publish the goings-ons of our friends like Tyrone Hughes, Mike Lewis, Delvin Breaux, who's teaching football camps like crazy this time of year. So make sure you check out those highlights too. And if you're in the area, it gives you instructions on how to sign up your kid for it if you're a parent. The promotions for Get Checked or Check Out, as well as donation information available through the Bayou Blitz group and our personal pages as well.
For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. Make sure to read Bob's work more than my work with Athlon Sports Inside the Saints. I'll have some betting odds news for you guys. The fun one, I won't tease the entire article, but the fun one is you actually have a Saint you can bet on for Offensive Rookie of the Year this year. What? I know that really narrows it down to like one draft choice, so spoiler alert. But I will give you guys those odds and on my opinion on why he may have better betting odds or worse betting odds than I initially anticipated. Bob and I will be back next Wednesday for another episode. If you guys have any questions or anything you want us to talk about as the offseason and mini camp slowly approaches, make sure to DM us or just head over to Twitter and tag us and the Bayou Blitz page at Bayou Blitz Pod. So until next Wednesday, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Until next week, find peace, spread love, practice positivity, and word life. See you then.
So, you think you're untouchable.
Word life. This is basic thugonomics. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me. Word life. This is basic thugonomics. Word life. I'm untouchable, but I'm forcing you to feel me.